Well, the thing about sustainability is it is largely an emotional thing. Architects are the primary movers in the world of the built environment. It's like, we don't want to talk about beauty. Why not? Why not? People care a lot about beauty.
Hello and welcome to the Business of Architecture. I'm your host, Rion Willard, and today I am delighted to present Paul Iddon, the founder of Agency PSI, for part 2 of our fabulous conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the brilliant Paul Iddon. This episode is sponsored by Smart Practice, Business of Architecture's flagship program to help you structure your firm for freedom, fulfillment, and financial profit. If you want access for our free training on how to do this, please visit smartpracticemethod.com. Or if you want to speak directly to one of our advisors about how we might be able to help you, please follow the link in the information. We are looking for architect developer stories for the Business of Architecture podcast. So, are you an architect developer with valuable insights to share? We're always on the lookout for passionate voices in the industry to join us on the Business of Architecture podcast. If you're ready to share your journey, lessons, strategies with our global audience, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us to explore being a guest on our show and help inspire other architect developers on their path. We'd be interested in hearing your story, whether you're at the very beginning of your development story or whether you have $100 million portfolio of projects already in the bag completed. We'd like to hear from you if you're working with the developers or that you've developed a number of small houses or you're working at a larger scale.
Well, the thing about sustainability is it is largely an emotional thing. I mean, that's going to be unpopular. I'll probably get shot to pieces now, but I'm not denying the science behind it. There's a rational argument behind it. But the most successful arguments with humans are emotional. I'll give you an example. Like at least for nearly 15 years, I worked for Arla. My client was Arla Foods, who are in the press at the moment. And basically, they've come out and they've said, we're doing an experiment where we're going to add this Bovair, I think it's called. It's like a feed additive that stops cows producing so much wind, to put politely, 27% less farting, to be honest, methane. And I think, oh, okay. And then I'll be demanding, well, look at the science, look at the science. It's been tested. The FDA said this, or the, not the FDA, that's American, isn't it? But the British equivalent. And one of my ex-clients was saying this, and I went, hang on a minute. You can't preach to or have a position, a strapline under your brand for like 15 years saying closer to nature and selling the emotional benefit. Because, I mean, dairy is a funny thing, right? I mean, at one level, you get milk out of a cow, you pasteurize it, to stop it being dangerous. And it's like cow, heat it up, put it in your tea. It's that simple. Yeah. But then the cows produce so much milk, far more milk than we can possibly consume. So the name of the game is, how do you preserve milk? And that's what the Arla Foods business model is based on. So they make cheese, which is like butter, fromage frais, yogurt, then milk powder, then processed cheese. A lot of these are quite a long way from nature at this point. They've added sugar, you've added flavorings, you've added, rennet, you do this, that, and the other, you process it, which is all fine. It's a perfectly good food. But my argument wasn't whether the science works or not. My argument was, well, you've been telling people for like years and years that it's about being closer to nature. And they're going like, absolutely, we want this to be a natural food, define natural. But anyway, there you go. And I say, okay. And then they say, but we're going to add this additive, which is kind of, whatever the chemical name for it. And people go, sorry, what you going to do? You're going to give a drug to cows. And, well, is that occurring in nature? No, it's a man-made drug. Well, hang on a minute. And then when people question it, then it's sort of, oh, right, no, you're not following the science, And I'm thinking, it's a bit like the profession. Sorry, I'm a long way around this, but it's a bit like the profession. When an organization suddenly changes direction and picks up this thing that's about climate or farmer activists, which is what on the front And I go, well, it used to be about natural food. You're asking the public to make a jump in their head, the consumer, that you've been programming in for years, and then they question your change of positioning, and then you feel offended by it. I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, you know, you created this through an emotional messaging. Um, so the argument there is that emotional messaging is powerful, and therefore it's so why aren't we? Where's in the architecture profession using similar things instead? We things like the RIB plan of work, or
Do you think that it should be, because this is the other thing, is we often think like a profession, and when we think like a profession, then we think of the daddy figure, the RIBA or whoever. Well, they're the ones that need to be doing it. But the reality of it is that like we're operating as individual businesses. So is it something for the RIBA to be doing, to have that, to kind of change the positioning, or to be marketing architects, or is it the responsibility of individual businesses to be doing it and storytelling and positioning themselves, or both?
well, it's both. I mean, from my point of view, there's a lot of architects out there who, like you say, small practices, who are battling on. They haven't got the time or the money to invest in getting a consultant in to talk about. And I'm not even sure that a lot of the consultants, obviously with the exception of yourself, right? A lot of the consultants can understand it in enough depth to realize what the problems are. Because a lot of marketers would come and look at architects going like, hang on, you do what? Um, so it's to me, it's, I think where the RIBA can play a role is like they do with guerrilla tactics or some CPD is, okay, we get these membership fees in, we can do events, we can say to people, look, give us £100 or whatever it is, and we'll do an event and we'll pull people in and we'll do some research and stuff. I think the RIB are in a good place to do that. They do research into other things, so why not this? I don't see any controversy in that because they already participate in talking about guerrilla tactics, for instance. And my argument would be that, like, well, guerrilla tactics the architecture professionals are not guerrillas.
Yeah.
The architecture practice is like the legal professional. Medicine is that we're architects are the primary movers in the world of the built environment. Now a lot of people argue no, they're not, but I always come back to the point. Well, okay, until an architect does something, and yeah, I know there are other providers, architectural technologists and whatnot, but most professional developers and most institutions know you've got to have an architect on board. It's a no-brainer. So to me, it's kind of like, well, architects are leading the culture of our built environment, and that's what architects are trained to do. But they've lost the ability to communicate that. But I think there's change happening. I see the things shifting. I think people realize now you just can't keep building stuff and it looks like this, and then especially the argument with sustainability. Well, the most sustainable building, right, is the one that people love because they keep it and they keep it going. As last night I was talking about.
Nice way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, for instance, one of the arguments is bricks are unsustainable with some people. Okay, and my question is, well, what do you mean by sustainable? Okay, define it. So one of the things I like to say is, okay, where is the oldest brick in a working building in the United Kingdom? I'm a pain with this kind of stuff. I write CPD, so I'm always looking up stuff like this. Have you any idea?
Tower of London.
Oh, no. Good guess. No. It's Cogs Hill Abbey in Essex. There's a chapel there it was built in the 11th century, and it's got Roman bricks built into it. They basically found Roman bricks, and those Roman bricks were made in the 1st century AD. So they're 2,000 years old. How long do you want them to last? Yeah, I mean, if you don't want that one, I say Hampton Court, 1530. Okay, constant occupation for nearly 500 years. and the chance are it's going to be there in another 1,000 years. So with sustainability, you have to measure it in terms of time and, over what period. So if you're talking about some cladding systems that have got a design life of 30 years, we're not in the same ballpark, are we? So you can't talk. So to me, it's kind of like,
Well, this is very much the argument that the traditionalists make around, when in sustainable arguments, is that, we've got a whole load of housing stock or building stock that's been around for literally thousands of years, that's been made out of stone and stone and bricks, and they, that's a pretty strong definition of what sustainability is.
well, I'm sitting outside in my garden office, or my shed. It's a nice shed, but it's a shed, yeah. And my house is 175 years old, built in 1850, and it's stone. And I was recommended by somebody, well, you need to insulate the outside and render it. And I said, I'd rather trap parts of my body in a door and do that. I won't name which parts, but it could be a finger, it could be a hand, it could be anything. But the one thing I'm not going to do is do an act of vandalism like that. And 1,000 feet above sea level and render is not good in this environment. All right, it's like, it's 38% of our housing in this country was built before the Second World War, and you know what? People love them. The 30 semi-detached house is one of the most popular types of housing ever devised in this country, and people love them. You get a garden at the front, garden at the back, somewhere to put your car at the side. You can get around, you can bring your bins around, you can take you know what I mean? All of those things. You got nice windows, you got glazing on 3 sides. What's not to like, right? So, but when, when we hear people say we've got to demolish all of this old housing, and thinking that, and end up with something that looks like, Pripyat, you know what I mean? And will be about as popular. It's been unoccupied since 1985. It's a big subject, and it's very emotional. And,
that's a great perspective on it. Actually, sustainability comes from designing things that people love and love to.
Of course, it's
and that's a very. I don't know if you've ever heard of the philosopher Satish Kumar. And he was the Indian Jain monk. And I think he started a magazine called Resurgence or something like that. But he was part of the Schumacher college down in the West Country somewhere. And he had a very interesting philosophy on sustainability, which was, rather than kind of fear-mongering, that we're all going to die if we don't look after the planet. His kind of more sort of from his Jain philosophy perspective was, if we realize how much we love the planet, or we love, you love something, then you look after it. And that's the most sustainable thing that we can do. And he was he often used the example of, you don't necessarily look after your mother because you're scared of her dying. You look after her because you love her.
In terms of sustainability, my mum's doing quite well. She's 100. So she's built very sustainable. She's well loved, and she's built to last, and she's like 4'9" or 10 now. The doctor, a GP turned around to her and said, "I can't believe this, but your blood pressure's better than mine." So she's I mean, but I think the point is that and I think this is where I suppose I can, having worked in consumer and worked in all that, humans are driven by emotion. Okay, so you take sustainability, you take a passive house. Somebody's going to basically create. It always worries me slightly to say passive when it's like airtight. I'm thinking, does that mean if you don't open the window, sooner or later you can run out of oxygen? So, I don't like the idea of that. It's like a Apollo 13 space capsule, but I don't think they mean that. But it's just the way it comes across sometimes. But the reason people are doing that, it's like the grand designs thing where they talk about, this talk about an off-grid net zero house, and it's like 400 square meters. Like you get 8 houses on that plot. But if somebody wants to invest in that and feel that's what they feel and that's what they believe they're doing something for their children or their grandchildren or for the world, yeah, there's a rational part of that, but there's a very big emotional part of it. And in fact, I'd argue personally, the emotional part is far bigger than the rational part.
Mhm.
If you actually look at the science of it,
So-
in that we did,
so-
you know,
So what does this mean for like an individual architecture business then to be able to harness the power of like we're talking about fees, salaries, raising them, and solutions. So what would you suggest like an individual business does with this, knowing that the emotional part of decision making for consumers is the thing that drives it?
Obviously there's two levels this can operate at. Going back into consumer speak, there's a category level, and then there's a product level. Okay, so you walk around any supermarket and you'll go to any particular category. Let's look at I don't know, chocolate. I was going to say toilet rolls there, but that's what known in the trade as a low interest, high importance category. Do you know the bit when do you ever see that meme where somebody's it's like empty toilet roll, cardboard tube, and a tiny scrap of toilet paper clinging to it, and somebody's written on it, "Where is your God now?" Oh, but in terms of categories, there are categories which are high interest, low importance. Okay, like chocolate. Mind you, it depends who you ask. You can live without chocolate, but living without toilet roll is difficult. Yeah. Well, yeah, but do you know what I mean? In terms of ranking,
I'll jump in the shower to make sure.
So yeah. So we're talking about need states. Okay, let's just talk about, and that's forget chocolate then. That's too emotive. Wait, but there's the argument. You see, chocolate is an emotive product.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got a category. Okay, and there are. I hate this expression, but it was used in the past called category captains, and that was the big players like Cadbury's, Nestle, okay, who drive the whole category of chocolate. But then you'll find that Cadbury's, for instance, realized a long time ago that they can't sell expensive chocolate because it's a fun, quite a low. It's not the best Belgian chocolate that people love the taste because it's a distinct flavor. It's fun, so they keep launching different variants, which got popping candy in and stuff like this. But if they want to sell a premium product, they bought green and blacks. They acquire. Okay, so within a category, you have to position yourself. Like, what is it I'm selling? Okay, and who's my target audience? And then helps you define your product. So your product sort of parameters. So this is fairly standard marketing stuff. It's Unilever, isn't it? And there's loads of models you can use for that. And I think what the profession needs is some basics in like the butterfly model or things like that. Because at the end of the day, you can think about all the rational arguments for what you're offering as a service. Please don't put award-winning architects as number one. Please. But to understand a position in the mind of your consumer, you have to make a creative leap. There's no way around it. And so that's where you have to think outside the box. So let's take the example about passive house or sustainability. Okay, there is an increasing demographic of people who have got the resources, they've got money, they've got the ability to borrow, whatever, and in their mind, that it's been instilled with them, or they want to do something for the world, which is perfectly legitimate and laudable. Okay, no problem. Now, I'd say this without sounding like exploiting people. Okay, but if that's their passion, people will pay for their passion. They'll pay a premium for their passion. Look at cars, look at chocolate. Okay, so you are in a far better position if you can find somebody who's passionate about what they're doing, or uncover or excavate that passion, if you like, because it'll be there. And then you say, yeah, but we do this and we have this complete service and we'll lead you through it and we do this and that. Not the RIBA plan of work. That's a rational. We have an emotional program of how you do it. Okay. And that can be creative and all sorts of stuff. But at the end of it, you're charging them 30% more. And that to me is like, that's the bottom line. Yeah. You're doing all this for a reason. Okay. So you have to find the pain point or the passion point. Which is solution selling as well.
Yeah.
So you can find that in almost any area. So for a practice owner, you have to say, well, what am I offering that's different? What can I conjure up? What story can I tell? And the point is that it's not about the architect; it's about the person who's buying the service of the architect. What's their story that you need to play into? I'm trying to be an example of this.
Well, I mean, this reminds me of the book, The Story Brand, the Donald Miller, and like his kind of principles of understanding the kind of avatar that you're selling to and making them the hero of the story. But it means understanding their problems, their pain points, and that's the kind of the first place of getting outside of the head of us being architects and actually see how the consumer is perceiving something and what they're actually struggling with and where they might be, irrationally emotional about a particular thing. Great. That's where we enter into.
I'll make a confession. I do this all the time with architects. Not with their practices, because I learned that I work with manufacturers because they have things called marketing budgets. Yeah, and they want to differentiate. In any particular category of construction product, that you'll have a number of suppliers. Okay, so at that point, it's about differentiation. If it's about price, then well, you don't need any help with that. That's just arguing with the contractor. But differentiation is key. So I think to myself, well, what can I do to help differentiate my client from its competitors? Now, one of the things I do is I write CPD. I write a lot of CPD. So I've introduced a whole other area, CPD, about storytelling based on my understanding of what it is to be an architect and talking to architects on a daily basis. So it's not about exploiting them. It's just about establishing a brand in their mind as a preference choice. Okay. So for instance, I try and play into what the architect's kind of soul is about. I'll give you an example. One of my clients said, you want to talk about sliding folding doors in extensions and alterations on houses, which are very popular, big expanses of glass. Again, I'm saying, well, why do people want that? Well, it's access to the garden. I'm going, no, that's just the how. Why do they feel that need to be able to open it up and be part of that? Okay, and that's very deep. So I came up with a kind of an outline, and I said, I want to call this CPD Memories of Green.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, if you know Vangelis, you'll know that's one of his tracks. It was also used on Blade Runner, okay, the original movie. Memories of Green, I said, because we're basically hunter-gatherers who've evolved over 200,000 years. We're used to being in the landscape. It's only in relatively recent times, last 1,000 years or two, that we've actually dwelt inside buildings. We were camping outside, following the food. So we've evolved to have a much greater precision of vision on color green than any other color, because we have to be good at that, because camouflage, we're looking for predators, so we are creatures of the landscape. And that, I said, that is a deep primeval move that people feel, to be part of that landscape, because they find themselves marooned in this kind of urban world, and there's something in the kind of the deeper recess of the brain. I said, so you can sell them like 20,000 quid for the sliding doors. But for the architect, who's the person selling it, it gives them an understanding of, so that's why people are obsessed about this, or one of the reasons. So I'm trying to say, well, there's an emotional argument you can use about feeling close to nature, because then you reduce your blood pressure, your heart rate. It's well documented physiological changes. So there's one angle. So you could even have a practice that says, forget about the extension. We're all about the connection to the green space. For instance, we're connecting you with your with a healthier past or your heritage. It's an argument.
Yeah.
But all I'm doing is differentiating again. People come and say, okay, we got 14 types of sliding door, with triple glazing. Well, that's the how, not the why.
Yeah.
So I think architects got to figure out the why. And again, that's what this is about. The why.
Tell us a little bit
about
about
what
this book.
Okay, well, this is written by my wife, actually, and Nick Moss, great architect. My wife's not an architect. She's a social scientist and writer. But she's been marinated in architects for the last 15 years. So she's met like dozens of architects. She's been to all the functions. So
Marinated in architects.
marinated. She's been basted, and has gained a deep sort of, because she's a social scientist, she gained a deep understanding of like what makes architects tick and how weird we are. And then there's a discussion that, the problem with a lot of modernism, which is 100 years old plus, is that it doesn't necessarily deliver the kind of emotional bond that people feel with the urban, with the built environment, in the way that previous movements like Art Deco, Art Nouveau, Secessionist movement, Glasgow School, arts and crafts. People feel deeply attached to buildings like that, like the town halls, but they don't feel attachment in the same way to modernist buildings. Why? Because they lack emotion. And so one of this is basically a way of like, well, we got to introduce emotion back into architecture, because emotion is the primary driver of human beings, as I've just been discussing. But I'll give you an example of what my absolutely excellent, lovely wife is like. I was in the background offering a few bits and pieces, but I'm just handy if she wants to ask a question. I mean, Nick and I did all the work. I was just in the background getting the asked it. And she asked me a question like, who's Louis Kahn? Okay. So I'd say, okay, Louis Kahn was this guy, blah, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, she's ordered like 8 books and she reads them cover to cover. Because she's thorough. And now we're talking about Christopher Alexander, a pattern language and a timeless way of building. Now I've got them on the shelf behind me. And I have to confess, I looked at the pictures and flicked through it and did that. She read them like a novel.
Wow.
She's fantastically researched on this. So basically this is, this is a differentiator. Okay. It's how to communicate, how to develop a bond with your client by talking about emotion of what's the environment and why it's necessary.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Blueprints for the Soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why we need emotion in architecture. I'm not going to plug it too much. It's an RIBA publication.
Yeah, we'll put a link to its purchase in the info of the podcast.
Hey, look, it's witty and it's funny and it's not hard to read. It's got lots of pictures. It's even got pictures of James Sterling's buildings in there and stuff. Yeah, it's got lots of pictures for architects to look at.
Love it.
Because I like looking at pictures. But that's what I'd say. We don't cover is some of the deeper consumer-driven research that Rory Sutherland understands, and in tapping into people's need states. Well, the one I used to say is, okay, Rion, I'm sure I've asked you this one before. What is the most popular chilled ready meal in the UK by a country mile.
Chilled ready meal.
Yeah. You know, you go to Marks and Spencer's or Sainsbury's, you go into the chilled
Oh.
food aisle.
I would go for a tikka masala.
Good guess. Good guess. That's the most popular hot food takeaway in the UK.
Right.
By the way, it originated in Scotland, Glasgow. But no, it's lasagna.
Oh, okay. I would have gone for spaghetti and then lasagna.
But why is lasagna so popular? Because it's a pain in the neck to make. It is absolutely. It's a comfort food. You can shove it in the oven. It's what you call a midweek fallback meal, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday. You think, I just want to shove it in the oven, and 40 minutes later, I'll eat this incredibly comforting, rich tasting meal. But it's a pain to make. You need this sauce, that sauce. You need to do that. Yeah, it take you like 4 hours to make. Whereas you get it from now. If you go to Sainsbury's or somewhere like that, you will find about 5 or 6 different levels of lasagna. Right? Okay, so I'm just saying, just bear with me a minute. Think of it as domestic extensions.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So at the top there's Charlie Bigham's, right, which is like £9, and it's a little wooden box. It is excellent, by the way, but it's £9, right? And then you'll have like a family tray-sized one for like the same price, but it'll feed like 15 people or something. And then everything between, you got value, standard plus, Uber, Uber standard, and then kind of premium, Uber premium. So even with something as modest as pasta, okay, you go look in a supermarket and see how many tons of pasta there are, and you'll have all the shapes, tagliatelle, all right, bucatini, some of the new ones, some of the the ones you get through MasterChef or something. And then you'll notice that there's the standard pasta, and then there's the bronze dye pasta, okay, which are more expensive because it's more authentic. So you got all the things there about authenticity, provenance. The old this isn't just food. This is Marks and Spencer's food. Even Marks and Spencer's are joking with their own strapline now, because I bought a pair of Christmas socks yesterday for this event, and it said on the socks, "These aren't just Christmas socks," which I thought was funny. They play with the whole, but it's getting into, why do people need these? Okay, because you can theory go up a supermarket, they have one of every product, which is kind of the original idea for Aldi, and that little restriction of choice. Okay, the tyranny of choice. So, but there are any number of niches a product can take, or a service, and it's thinking outside the box of what need state that, and what emotional satisfaction that offers. So, but that takes a lot of effort, and it takes creativity, and it takes you to sort of a jump to a different level.
Well, it really makes a very important point, that at the moment in the architect profession, we're just not engaging with marketing or sales at all. Like that's a big resistance, but it's the key. It's the key for being able to raise fees, position ourselves in a way, get better quality work out there to achieve all of the kind of broader aims of the profession and what individual architects want to have, and to have a more agency as a profession. This deep level of communication and learning it has wide ranging applications, not just in selling stuff, but also in talking to your team members and marketing to yourself even.
Well, yeah, I talk to students about this. I mean, think about the target audience you're selling to. Yeah, I mean, what are they interested in? Okay, and what they care about. I refuse to believe that there isn't a solution to this, because I see it in every other walk of life. Okay, you can even see it in dentistry, can't you? I mean, you can see it in medicine. You can see it everywhere. You can see it in law. The stratification of premium value. Now, there'll always be people who want to compete on price. Okay. I just don't think that architects should do that. I think there are other players
Agreed.
who can beat on price. So architects had to need that. Well, for a kickoff, the architect title should offer reassurance. Okay, so that's, and I think this is where the people like the RIBA come in, because it's like, that's the mark of assurance. And you could turn around, the RIBA can turn around and say, all of our members are subject to this, and this. You have, they're answerable. They have a code of conduct. They do this, but they're also trained to a very high level, not just on the technical side, but on the emotional side, about creating beauty. It's like, we don't want to talk about beauty. Why not? Why not? People care a lot about beauty. Go and look at cars. Go and look at fashion. Go and look at makeup. Go and look at all of the half the shops that populate the high street are about beauty. Why aren't we talking about this? It's so obvious. But we always seem to boil it down to these few same things. There's a sustainability one, passive house. Where about the other end? Absolutely unapologetic hedonism. Okay, there's a market for that. The penthouse with the 3 pools and the sort of 15 kinds of marble. I mean, why not? Architects are there to provide a service for money. It's not a charity. So going back to the beginning, I just don't think we're exploring enough of the kind of thoughts that people like Rory Sutherland has, for instance. The whole thing he did about, Eurostar. Like, for 1% you could get broadband, and if you for 10% you could get models going up there train giving out free glasses of wine, Chateau Lafite 64, and people will ask you to slow the train down. So he's right. We've got to look at it from a psychological perspective rather than just, you're providing a box for people to live in. It's all working.
Amazing. Paul, I think that's a perfect place to conclude the conversation. That was wonderful. I could have spoken to you for another couple of hours, but we'll have to do another one. But absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
No, I'll tell you about the crackers another time.
But
I'll leave that one with you. Next episode. Thank you, Ryan. Always great to talk to you, man. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Hey, Enoch Sears here, and I have a request. Since you are a listener here of the Business of Architecture podcast, Ryan and I, we love putting this podcast together. We love sharing information as much as we can glean from all the other industries that we're a part of to bring it back to empower you as an architect and a designer. And one thing that helps us in our mission is the growth of this podcast, simply because it helps other architects stand for more of their value, spreads the business information that we're sharing to empower architects together, so architects, designers, engineers can really step into their greatness, whatever that looks like for each individual. And so here my simple ask is for you to join us and be part of our community by doing the following: heading over to iTunes and leaving a review of the podcast. And as an expression of our sincere thanks, we would like to give you a free CEU course that can get you one professional development unit, but more importantly, will give you a very solid and firm foundation on your journey to becoming a profitable and thriving architect. So here's the process for that. After you leave us a review, send an email to support@businessofarchitecture.com. Let us know the username that you use to leave the review, and we will send you that free training. On the training, you'll discover what 99% of architecture firm owners wish they would have known 20 years ago.
Hello, listeners. We hope you're enjoying our show. We love bringing you these insightful conversations, but we couldn't do it without the support of our amazing sponsors. If you're a business owner or know someone who would be an excellent fit for our audience, we'd love to hear from you. Partnering with us means your brand will reach over 40,000 engaged listeners each month. Interested in becoming a sponsor? Please send us an email at support@businessofarchitecture.com. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you be unstoppable.